MSI 2024 tier list slash power rankings. You know, a lot of people have been doing this. I obviously, of course, wanted to do it myself as well. And I've seen quite a few different, looks that people have done. And some of them I definitely don't agree with. Some of them are actually a bit close to what I was thinking. And I'm going to explain why I chose what I chose. And just to quickly, highlight, if you see like this S, this B, this C, this basically means that next to these teams, I believe they have the potential to rise up to the next tier. So like T1 can rise up to S tier, G2 could rise up to B tier, FlyQuest could rise up to C tier. And that's just like my own personal feelings towards like what could happen, what players could improve, get their shit together and actually like promote that team more. So let's start from the top because that is the easiest thing to do. The S tier teams, a ton of people have them in S tier, and it's for obvious reasons. Gen G, now naturally, Gen G has won LCK and then kind of flopped in international. So hopefully that's not the case. And unfortunately for Gen G, they actually do have a distinct disadvantage in a lane, which, hopefully it doesn't turn out too bad, but if it does, that will hurt them. It's their bot lane. Pays and Lehens, these guys are not like the greatest bot lane, especially for international sake. The fact that they won LCK is like, wow, that's pretty cool. But generally, Pays is not a very good ADC in terms of taking the reins, providing a ton of pressure, and really playing forward to his best abilities based on like what he can read with the threats, and using the space he has to do even more than he really could, because he has a ton of space because he has, you guessed it, the best solo laners in the entire world. He has Chovy and Keen, who, yeah, like I said, most people would say like these guys are literally the best top and mid laner in the world, not just MSI, but in the world. And Keen does an incredible job of covering his bot lane's ass, and so does Chovy. Chovy will do it in the early stages, like where he will be able to get vision for them, like half roam, do feints, and like that will pressure the enemy bot lane, so his bot lane is like chilling. And then Keen in the mid late will push aside, and then he'll actually shift mid. He might even do a deep push and sit mid for a prolonged time, just to make sure that they can get pushed constantly while Chovy gets side waves. And in doing so, they kind of take turns just helping their bot lane like chug along, which is not something I really see by any other team with their bot lanes. A lot of teams still just let their bot lanes do what they have to do. But these guys specifically are really good at helping them. And like I said, Pays just does not have the qualities of what you would you want from like the best of the best ADCs. And I don't think that's ever going to change. So he's pretty much a cleanup ADC. But again, he has the best solos in the world, which does wonders, like a ton of wonders. And in Canyon, he gets to play his most ideal style, and what a lot of styles like that, like junglers want to do, which is a high tempo camp taking like style. So Canyon is always strong. And I will say, I'm still not 100% sure if I would view Canyon as the best jungler in the world, because to me, I feel like he doesn't always know how to accelerate the game the best. I also do think the way he fights at times can be kind of poor. But it has like it kind of varies, but the consistency of his play is so like good, it's tight enough that it's really hard to say like he's just not that. He's very good, right? And so like that's what Gen G as a team is, and you compare them to the rest of the teams, one, obviously naturally having such a strong top side is going to garner you wins. Like you're just going to get wins from that alone. And if your bot lane, even though I don't think their bot lane is the best, they do try to hold their own. And because of the style of Gen G, like with helping them, it does negate what other weaker bot lanes would have trouble with, because their teams are not as good at like helping them. And Gen G also so happens to me be probably one of the smartest teams when it comes to side play, like specifically knowing how to make TP plays, trading the map, and also like I said, the way they help their bot lane, they know how to still keep farming. It doesn't seem like they really drop farm while doing this, so that may get exposed depending if someone finds a way to deal with it or like to punish it. But for now, yeah, I think they're very formidable, and the fact that they found a way to kind of help themselves is also great. Uh, BLG on the other hand, BLG is like they're a little bit hard to classify in some ways because I think it's a lot of people want to say that Bin is going to be the man. You know, like people always have this image of Bin of being like a, you know, a monster, but honestly, at least from like what I watched in playoffs, I didn't feel that way. He was good. Like don't get me wrong, for like international wise, like he was good. But I didn't feel like he was a monster or anything like that, or like an unbreakable will kind of player. And Knight is a little similar. It's not his play is not as tight as Chovy. So like they're about a tier below of what Chovy and like Keen are, but they're still very good. Jun is good though. Like I know he makes mistakes and he'll choose some decision making that I believe Canyon would not do, but he does also know how to accelerate a bit better than Canyon as well. And I gotta say, like he's actually not bad. So you know their top side is very reasonable. Like like it's not like they're just gonna like just fall apart to Gen G. And then where what's really propping them up to be an S tier is their bot lane. Like Elk is by far the best AD coming into MSI. Is he the best AD in the world? Not 100% sure, but at least for MSI wise, he is 100% the best. He's extremely consistent. He reads the threats on like in the fights incredibly well. He knows how much space he needs to get. Then he'll go in and press you. He always has key abilities and he will always flash your shit. Like honestly, he's just he is obnoxious. And if everyone remembers how Ruler was on JDG last year, like again, it's just you just feel like you feel so helpless. Like you're just like this guy's just I can't kill him. He's like pouring out damage and I literally can't kill him still. Like that is him. And if his teammates, like, you know, if Bin and let's say Knight do rise up and meet their challenge, it's going to be really good for them. So, yeah, BLG 100%, you know, S tier team. T1. You know, T1 had the 3-0 loss to HLE, and when I rewatched that series, I thought to myself, like, well, going in, I thought, like, oh, they, like, 3-0, like, they must have just gone shit on, like, how did they get 3-0? It was a close-ass series, and they were playing triple ADC comps with Corki TF, and that's not easy. It's really not easy to navigate those fights, and you could look at them and realize that, like, they were pretty close on the cusp of winning fights, even though it was, like, a hard comp to play. And if they just made some alterations towards like the execution, they would win. Like they were very closely contested games. And even though Owner, like he still ints quite a bit randomly, Guma doesn't look as solid as he has before. Faker, you know, he could have like done better in certain fights, especially in situations where I think he could have been 1v5, but he didn't commit. Which is a little sad to see. But the team is smart. Like, regardless of what I have to say on also Zayas was like pretty much invisible in like finals, and again, like, you know, he handles himself very well in lane Zayas, but it comes to some of the map movement and fights, it doesn't always work out. But again, generally the way T1 plays like kite comps and they like how they help each other, they're good. And you know, if they get their shit together, like they're not there yet at Gen G BLG level, but like if they get their shit together and they're definitely a capable, creative, smart team, they're a threat. They're a damn big threat. And I've seen people put T1 and Tess at the same level, and I can't do that. It just makes no sense to me. So I wrote down notes, right? Like right here. And so like, you know, I mentioned some of the things I said about T1, like Keria is still very good at navigating how to like get vision, how to hide himself, finding plays. You know, Faker, like I said, I think he could have done a lot better than what he was doing. And if that's his like where he caps off, that's not the best, but it's still not bad, like nearly. And the same goes for Zayas. Like, you know, if he gets his shit together, it turns out really well. And you know, it's a lot of like what ifs a bit for T1, and it's just the fact they're so good at these kite comps and like these range comps that other teams don't typically play or can't play. Like Tess can't play that style. Like 369 cannot do that style at all. Genji can technically, and BLG to a degree can, but I don't think that's their preference. So T1 has some unique pieces to them. And then when I watch Tess, like I'm gonna be honest, guys, Tien was like kind of bad consistently. Like he makes weird decisions. He will like just randomly die and just fall for certain plays that just should not happen. And even though he would like, it's not like he was just shit the entire time, but I don't know. There was just a feeling in my gut where like when I just kept watching him, just thinking like, there's no way you can have a guy jungling like this and then me think that this guy's actually gonna raise up to like the next level. Mako, like he plays, he has really good skill shot accuracy. I mean, like I'll say right now, the support pool going into Worlds for major like teams is pretty damn good. I'm actually really excited about the support players that are going to be competing in this tournament. And yeah, he's no slouch. Like this guy has like incredible hook accuracy, timing, Nami bubbles. Like I was just like, holy shit! You know, when he actually is on it, like he is on it. But also he's like kind of falls for some pretty bad like deaths, just walking in, just randomly dying. That kind of hurts the team's tempo and control. So he's like, I don't know, 70-30 of good, bad. Cream was good. That guy, honestly, I was surprised, like consistently throughout all the games I watched, pretty damn good. Like pretty damn good. Like I was pretty happy about his performances, and I think he's probably the best player on Test going into this tournament. And then there's Jackie Love and 369, and this is where like, you know, this is where things will go a little bit different and like how I think about them compared to T1. So 369, you know, a lot of people view him as the shield, the guy who holds down the fort really well. I'm watching his fights and like there's stuff he could have done to just one fight straight up that he's just not doing. Like he has situations where he's playing Gragas and he can like, he has a perfect flank and he just completely screws up his cask. And then he doesn't even throw his body or builds any pressure on their opponents. Like, I don't know. Outside of like a Renekton game that he played, and he had one really good Urgot game. But besides like some of that, I generally did not have like intense feelings that 369 was going to be a very dependable individual. And so this causes 369 and Tien their inconsistency to pull off fights well to kind of dampen what Cream and Jackie Love can do. Because even though Jackie Love is definitely an incredible ADC player, and he also, again, is prone to some really stupid deaths in situations, especially even like level 1 or 2, like he's completely screwed his like the game over from just contesting 2 minions and an auto attack as Lucian level 1. Like he actually ruined a game just from that alone, which is obviously inexcusable to be happening in a playoff game at his level, but it happened. And you know, because he's having like his jungle on top are not creating enough space for him, or at least enough pressure for their opponents to feel, that kind of makes Jackie Love a little bit more prone to plays, because Jackie Love always likes to press and like show his presence. So Jackie Love becomes a prime target in fights, while 369 is not really doing so much, and neither is Tien. Only person who really is Cream. And like I said, that guy definitely doing his job. 100% he's doing his job. So if 369 can get his shit together, and same with Tien, you know, in theory, you could say like they could rise up to an A tier. But for me, I don't think that's going to happen. Like I don't think this team is actually that smart at playing the map and playing the game. Like not nearly as smart as people think, even though they ended up going second in LPL and even to 5 games that one time versus BLG. I just didn't have a feeling that they were actually that intelligent of a team. So like there's definitely intelligent stuff happening, but just like the way they play like side waves and like approaching certain fights, I was just like, T1 would do better here, like a lot better. And that's why I have T1 just completely separated from Tess. Now, there's G2 and Team Liquid, and a lot of people have G2 in its own tier, and Team Liquid is not at the same tier. And I understand why, because when you watch G2, they have a certain way of how they did playoffs where they were doing a bunch of lane swaps. They were deprioritizing Herald, and they were playing more harder on like getting boss side ahead and getting more gold. And of course, you know, like the lane swaps they knew better than anyone else. So, and I know how like the BB and Caps play together, and they're definitely smart. Like they know how to play together, how to win games together, how to push each other ahead. They know how to kind of snowball balling as well and make cross-map TP plays, which is actually a little bit reminiscent to Gen G. So this is why I have them going up to a B tier, because to me, you know, there's certain, like, I feel like G2, T1, and Gen G are some of the smartest teams going into this tournament. And I have to pay my respects to that. You know, that definitely will carry you like far. But for one, when it comes to G2, Hans Sama, you know, I don't think he's really anything. Like, I think he's just a cleanup ADC, kind of similar to Pays, and you know, that feels a little bad. Like, that's very like a clear like, oh, okay. And BB is not obviously as good as guys like Bin and Keen. He's not bad, but he's like not as good as them. And LEC has been kind of a BB has just been destroying LEC consistently, but when he goes to international, he kind of flops. Like, he might get initial good starts for like 3-4 minutes, and then he just kind of screws up, and the game's just like lost on his side. And until he shows that he can actually like overcome these situations, he's not fully dependable. And Mickey X had a really bad finals. I would say he definitely did better outside of those finals, which is why I don't feel as like uncomfortable on saying that G2 can promote up, because last time they played international, the players who really shined were Caps and Mickey X. Like, thanks to those guys, they 100% like were able to help them like push through. But like I said, I don't feel like anything's gonna change for Hans Sama, and BB needs to make sure he's staying solid, or else yeah, things are gonna collapse a little bit. And I feel like the level of their individuals just won't meet, you know, some of these higher end teams. But because they're so smart, and because they can actually like, you know, navigate some of these other situations, that's why, again, I think they have the potential to B tier. Now, why are they the same tier as C, as Team Liquid for now? Again, like I said, I don't think in the moment they are necessarily higher than Team Liquid. They can be, but right now they're not. And for Team Liquid, I thought these guys were surprisingly good. Like, I think they play very well together as a unit. Like, how APA also thinks about how he can cover his teammates, how they cover for him, how Core JJ, and Impact all play around each other. They know exactly almost what's going on around like each of their minds. They are actually pretty good at accelerating the early game. I would say this is probably one of their better focuses, is knowing how to create fights and moments, since was such a big invader, and like kind of excelling in the early game. G2, I feel like, is not as good at that, but I feel like G2 for sure will be more annoying in mid late, because I think Team Liquid is not as good as them when it comes to side play, knowing like where the right plays are on the side waves. I think this is something TL kind of struggled a little bit on. So that's where G2 will probably be better for sure. But in early game, I thought TL was actually surprisingly pretty well coordinated and had good ideas. And yeah, you know, we'll say like, oh, is like APA going to be an issue as usual? But if your team knows how to operate well together, like, it is possible to overcome some of these like mismatchups that you might see. Now, obviously, like Chovy versus APA is a completely different story, because that will get obnoxious real quick. But for now, with how G2 is, I don't think it's that hard to imagine them being able to match up to them. Again, this may change based on how their practice goes, but for now, this is kind of what I'm sticking with. Fnatic FlyQuest in the D tier. Now, for me, I want to be straight up. Like, I think Fnatic have low brain power. Like, I don't know what's going on in their heads, but I just generally did not like the ideas they had on the fights they want to take, like the timings, how they play the map, you know, whether it's even right to contest something. Like, there was a lot I just did not find to be good enough. And I think their team fighting, which people spoke up on, not that great either. So I think they're really slacking. And because of that, like, you know, I know people can say, well, Humanoid can get better. Like, I mean, like, Oscar could get better. And it's true. I mean, yeah, maybe they do get better, but to me, like, I feel like they're just lacking as a unit. They're lacking as a unit, and their brain power seems to not be high enough. And the end result is, I doubt they're going to improve enough to jump up tiers. That's just how I feel. And I think people that put Fnatic with TL in the same like terms, I think it's just completely wrong. Because is there a world that Fnatic can beat TL? Of course. I mean, like, you know, just because like Genji is tier S and TL is tier C, that they're like, oh well, Genji's just automatically gonna win. No, of course not. Like, it just means the percentage chance of TL beating Genji is just not nearly as high as if like T1 versus Genji, right? So with Fnatic versus TL, it's not like it's a huge tier leap from D to C tier, but yeah, I don't think Fnatic plays well enough as a team. And I've like, even when I'm watching Razork making some decisions, seeing how he uses his abilities in some of the fights, like, it's just, I didn't actually feel like he was like what people say he is. And, you know, maybe that just might be the case of not enough people really like creating plans with each other. And like, I know one thing, like, it looks like Humanoid's kind of like an NPC at times, just like how Jensen can be. So if Razork has to take a lot of control, naturally, if you're the guy who takes a lot of control, you will make some decisions that look kind of stupid. And I don't know if that's the case for them, but it might be. Now, one thing I will say is that Jun is pretty damn good, actually. Like, at least based on what I watched, he's top 2 support easy in LEC and might be better than Mickey X, at least consistency wise. Like, he was really good. But Noah was shit. Like, consistently, in the fights I watched, Noah was making bad decisions. And I have no faith in that player. So, yeah, that's Fnatic. FlyQuest, Bwipo's fine. Bwipo, like, he's not going to overtake, I feel like, a lot of players, but he has a very solid foundation. And he definitely can create pressure and knows how to create space for his team when necessary. Something I think other players will lack, even if they're better than Bwipo. And that's a really nice thing. I think Inspired definitely can be like one of the best like like players in this system. You know, it's not easy. Naturally, if you have a team that's worse, like, it's not going to be easy. But I feel like his style is very much similar to like how top end Korean junglers like to play. And that consistency and like dependability that he gives to his team goes a long ways. Now, the problem is his style actually would be really good if his mid laner was, well, better. I mean, Jensen is like Humanoid in a lot of ways. I feel like both of them are kind of like bots. And, you know, I think they just have to draft the right way with Jensen in order to make things right. And if they don't, I don't think it's going to go so well. And of course, their bot lane, you know, their bot lane really did not have much, like, as much impact as they should have in finals. And there's a huge question mark around them, whether they're going to be good enough or not. And naturally, you know, if they do rise up, yeah, I do think FlyQuest can rise up as a whole, maybe pushing into the C tier, though I don't know if they would actually be near, like, as good as G2, probably not. But, like, I think they could rise up to C tier because, like, Masu playing very well goes a long ways. Inspired is a very special player, too, in that he's a commander. Like, he's the type of person who can literally handle covering other people's jobs, you know, in the game while performing, which is something very rare to have. Like, it's a very difficult job, like, role to have, and he can do it. Like, Razork, to me, seems like he can't. Like, if you had Inspired on Fnatic, I think that team would be so much better. But he's on FlyQuest. And, you know, like I said, it's a big if. And I'm going to say right now, in their current form, for sure, Fnatic is better than FlyQuest in their current form. So it's going to depend a lot on FlyQuest to make some gains to get over this. Just like how I think this is also true. You know, like, again, like there's some gains that need to be like happening to them to equalize, but I don't think like it's a massive leap, so they're in the same tier. And for bonus sakes, you know, just to show what I think, at least going in, may be the tier list for players. And some of these may like may rub people the wrong way. We'll see. You know, some of them I could see myself adjusting still, but I'm just gonna stick to what I have for now. My power rankings for players, I think it's no joke, you know, based on, I'm not gonna like go like over explaining some of these situations because I already kind of talked about it during my team rankings, but in top lane, it's Keen by far. Like, he's the smartest top laner to me, at least on how he plays like the map and how he actually goes about his fighting, specifically where he needs to be and who he needs to target and help in fights. He knows how to react very quickly in those situations. Plus, his champ pool is massive, very massive. So, Keen, S tier. Bin, champ pool, not as good as Keen. Not playing nearly as good as you would imagine him to be playing, but still solid. Zeus, you know, he has a very expert style in one sense, but in another, you know, kind of lacking. Bin is lacking less than Zeus, at least in terms of some of that champ pool issues. And in that case, that's like probably why you would say Bin is better than Zeus. But Zeus is still a very capable player. And if you look at the B tier, you know, I think there's a lot of players here that are all kind of the same. You know, I think a lot of these guys are also pretty smart. You know, BB, Impact, Blippo, I think these are all rather smart players. I think their skill set I think their like skill level isn't obviously as high as some of the players above them, naturally, as these guys are quite good. But they will do some things better than, for instance, Zeus. Maybe something better than Bin. Something's better than Keen, probably unlikely, but I think they could do some certain aspects of the game better than A tier players. At 369, you know, like I already talked about it with the test thing, but I don't know. If he was consistently playing well in fights, I would have put him in A tier, but he's not. So he's in B tier. And Oscar's in C tier. I mean, he's just not there. I mean, like, all these guys are like definitely play the game better than him. And I even consider putting him in D tier because it actually might be that big of a difference. But for now, I'm going to keep him in C tier. Mid lane, obvious, Chovy at S. You know, he has the best base timings, the best laning phase. He just knows what to do in the game always. A tier will be interesting, and B tier, because so A tier I chose Cream and Knight. And this is not like saying Cream is better than Knight, but I do think he handled Knight perfectly fine. And I do think he knows how to register those key moments of like, oh, this guy just used flash, he has no flash, and he just moved up in this sense. I can get a sick shuffle play in. And Knight does the same thing. I think both these are actually very comparable and good players. Obviously, people will say Knight is better than Cream, but I do think Cream definitely deserves to be in the A tier. Now, Caps could be in the A tier, but I need to see him in the better competition because EU mids are just so bad that like it's not even like. I mean, what can I say? Like, I mean, the competition he's facing in LEC is just like whatever. And Faker, you know, I don't think he deserves to be an A tier with these two players. But again, he's very capable. And I think Faker and Caps are quite similar in that, you know, they started off as very talented, aggressive, you know, just highly skilled, you know, mid laners. And over time, they've kind of mellowed out. But it mellowed out in terms of like, they just understand what is needed for the game and the team to win, which is a very good thing to have. Chovy is the same way. Chovy, you know, initially was just so gung-ho on like laning and like playing his best. And then over time, he's just added the team aspects to his play. And that's what makes him so fucking amazing, is because he has his old self and he has his new self. And Faker and Caps, I feel like they can be not nearly as good, you know, in the laning phase, but they really do get what is needed to win. And that like makes a huge difference. I mean, there's a reason why Yagao like always does so well. It's not like Yagao is like an incredible mid lane talent in terms of like raw skill, but it's because he understands that team aspect that this excels him. Now the D tier is gonna be interesting because you know, I have APA here, I have Jensen here, and I have Humanoid here. I do feel like Jensen and Humanoid lack that team thoughtfulness. I really do. I don't think these guys actually know how to play around what is needed to win enough. And I feel like Humanoid has not shown that he is. I mean, I expected him to have the raw skills to actually win his matchups more than he should, but he's not showing that. And Jensen, to a degree, can at times, but it's not consistent. And like I said, I just don't think he adds enough towards like actually helping the team strategy. APA actually does. What he lacks a little bit more is some of his raw skills. And we'll see how that goes against these other players, because in the end, I do think APA actually can be a smart player and contribute more than Jensen and Humanoid, which is why I felt like it wouldn't be fair for me to put Jensen and Humanoid above APA if I thought that maybe they have better raw skills, because they're lacking in the areas that APA is better at. And APA won. I mean, like, there's a reason why APA literally added more to his team than Jensen. Even if Jensen beat APA a little bit, like, APA still had a better idea on what to do. So for that, like, I just feel like I just can't put these guys above APA. And so everyone is in D tier. To be honest, everyone's in D tier. Jungle. Canyon's done. I talked about these guys already. You could go back in the VOD if you want to look at it, but these are... And I was tempted on having Canyon as a sole S-tier jungler, but from what I saw in his games, I do think there was moments that just made me say, I don't think this guy could just be alone up here. Not like Keenan, not like Chovy. So John's here. Inspired Owner, you already know I talked about how much, you know, the good skill set that Inspired has. And Owner will have his ints, but Owner is still, again, a very skilled player as well. He's an LCK jungler who understands how to play that kind of tempo game. And he also actually knows how to play forward a bit better at times than even Canyon. And yeah, I gotta say, like, I mean, he has to be A tier. And then B tier, it's everyone else. And, like, everyone has their own issues in the B tier. I think Tien is incredibly inconsistent, but he's still okay. I think Yike has slotted into the G2 system very well. But again, like, yeah, he will, like, just run at people randomly. Same with Razork, and same with Umpty. Like, honestly, a lot of these, like, all four of these guys have some similarities. And they're just not consistent enough to put themselves in A or S tier. But it does show that the jungle pool is kind of evenly matched. Dual lanes, you know, we'll go over this before going into like where I think ADC and supports are, but for me, it's BLG, it's T1 and Tess. You know, Jackie Love and Maiko are still very capable players, and as an individual lane, it's just kind of like what's happening elsewhere. So, you know, these guys versus the rest, like, I think they just beat them. And T1, again, very capable. I don't think there's actually a B tier, which may piss people off. I'm like, maybe it's wrong for me to do that. I'm not 100% sure. But for me, it's like, I feel like Fnatic's duo, I feel like G2's duo, I feel like Gen G's duo, I feel like TL's duo. I don't feel like there's a defining, like, huge difference between them to warrant them to be in different tier. And if they're all B tier, and they're only one tier under these other guys, I don't think that's true. I think there is definitely a clear difference between these bot lanes. Like Fnatic, like I said, I don't have a lot of faith in Noah, but Jun is good. G2, I don't have a ton of faith in Hans, but Mickey X is good. Gen I don't have a lot of faith in Pays, but I think, well, actually, to be fair, it's more like I don't have a lot of faith in Pays, and I don't have too much faith in Lehens, but they're still very capable. And then TL, Gion, I actually have a little bit more faith in, even though I don't think he's going to overtake games. I think he actually got a little bit smarter from the time playing with TL in spring, which is a big benefit, and actually why TL is in C tier with them. And Core JJ is good. Core JJ had a really good like playoff run. FlyQuest, they can't be in the rest of them. They have to prove themselves, so they're alone in D. Now, if you look how I compared this in my ADC and support rankings, you know, I have Elk and On. And, you know, do I think On is a solo S tier rank, you know, support, and these guys don't deserve to be with him? I'm gonna be honest, I don't know. I actually don't know. This might be a mistake on how I rank these supports, but for now, it's kind of, I don't know. I'm not 100% sure, guys. I'm gonna be honest, because I've seen him play really well, but I feel like he inconsistently dies a little bit more than On, and I think Kyria can do that as well. But obviously, Kyria and this guy are both incredible supports, and it's why they're a whole other tier than these guys, because, yeah, they're that damn good. And Jun, Core JJ, Mickey X, Lahens, I mean, this is very similar to this. The difference is that I do believe they're a tier under. They're not 2 tiers under. I believe they're only a tier under. And I actually do think Busio is well under, because he is so inconsistent in even his laning phase, plus team fighting, that it just, and I feel like his champ pool is a little bit limited, because it's like he'll play some weird picks, but then he can't play staples. It's not working for me. Elk, Guma, Jackie Love, you know, pretty easy. Pays, Hans. So this is a little bit different, because even though, you know, I put all the dual lanes in C tier here, I do think that Pays and Hans will play better, obviously, than Noah and Yeon. I think that is a very fair thing to say. And, you know, if I say it this way, you could say, well, then shouldn't you put G2 and Gen G in B tier then? Instead of it all in the same? To me, it's just, do I think that this bot lane is going to, G2 bot lane is going to shit on the TL bot lane? And I feel like, no. So, like, as a duo together, probably not. But as individuals, when it like comes to contributions and fights and everything, these guys will make less mistakes, and that will actually matter more in fights versus laning phase. Yeon, Noah, Masu at the bottom. He just has to grow. The FlyQuest bot lane has to grow, or things are going to be rough. So that, guys, is my power rankings, my tier list for the MSI teams and the MSI players for all the major regions. Thanks for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe. See ya.